Well, should we get started?
Yes, please.
Well, Mr. Treasurer, thank you so much, and our esteemed guests, thank you so much for joining us. I think we did brief introductions, and maybe we'll start by actually just going around the table back and introduce yourselves. I won't mangle anything, but I'm Tim Hunt, I'm the chairman of the Select Committee on Economic Disparity and Fairness and Growth. I'm joined by two colleagues here who are also members of the committee, Untitled of Washington, and Sarah Jacobs, who's been hosting us from San Diego. Despite she's got a whole story about Mexican food and stuff, but she did an awful lot of work to set this up. We've also got a terrific staff here. Sadly, no Republican members, but we've got a great senior team of the Republican staff. So we are bipartisan in the way we're listening. We're just so grateful to you guys for spending this time with us because we really are here. We're going to do something unusual for members of Congress, which is to listen a lot because we are really here to hopefully hear what you're up to. Our mission is to understand the problems of economic disparity and all of their complexity, and then propose solutions. And so it's that second part as chairman that I'm really focused on, which is how can we hold up and highlight those programs that are making a difference out there, not just federal government programs, but programs that may be occurring in the state or municipal level, of course, that are happening in civil society. With that, maybe I can just ask my colleagues to introduce themselves very quickly, and Mr. Treasurer will turn it over to you.
Well, hi, I'm Sarah Jacobs, I represent San Diego. I'm excited to be here and hearing about all these great projects that you all are working on. We have a lot of safety issues in San Diego, and you all have here in San Francisco. In fact, we just overtook you as the most expensive place to live, so
Come on.
Not gonna go on the date, really excited.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Jackal, and I represent Seattle and surrounding areas, and we always have a friendly competition with San Francisco. We think we get a lot of the great progressive solutions first, but we're always looking to learn from other cities like yours. I also chair the Racial Progressive Caucus, and so we've been working on issues of disparity and racial justice and many other problems that we face. And so it's a real honor for me to be here and hear from you about things that you're doing and things we should be thinking about on the committee and we propose to do.
Well, thank you and welcome, folks. My name is Jose Cisneros. I'm the elected treasurer of the City and County of San Francisco. Our office runs a number of programs to benefit low-income folks, particularly when it comes to financial matters, how they can be more careful and safe with their money and how they can be prepared for financial goals going forward. I'm honored to talk to you today, but I'll let my colleagues who joined us here introduce themselves. We're going to talk about a couple of programs that the city's doing right now. So Penny, thank you for that.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Penny. I'm a mother of four. I have two children in high school. I have one daughter in middle school, and my 5-year-old will enter kindergarten the following week. I work with Mission Graduates, and I'm here to speak about the PTC program.
Hi, my name is Nabi Khalid. I'm a mother also in a small business owner. I have 3 boys in middle school, but also in elementary school, and another one in kindergarten as well. They study kindergarten this year. And I'm also a small business owner that's been trying to juggle the two, family life and business work. I'm also here to talk about the PTC program, how it's impacted my family and how COVID and only the program for the city has been have included in supporting our community and business that I.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Sybil Shooter from the Uruguay Center for the Arts, or YBCA, here in San Francisco, down the street in the Soma neighborhood. I'm here today to talk to you about our guaranteed income pilot for artists. This is a pilot that launched in May of 2021 and is part of a 2-pronged guaranteed income body of work. And I'm also here with my friend and colleague Kevin, who is an artist advocate and one of the participants in the cohort of
We haven't done one. Wow.
I am a writer, poetry, writing for the
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate your being here, and we hope for actually an opportunity for some dialogue. But I think the plan was for each of you to make brief presentations to 6 speakers on this. Okay. Remote.
Sure, I can. Good morning, everyone. My name is Esmeralda. I am the executive director of the program that is located in the city of Hunters Point. It's called City EMT. It is an income, a community-based income paid training program, 16 weeks, and we target the 18 to 24-year-old community and the Black and Brown community to get them their EMT certification, which is the entry level into the first responder career pathways. And we are just starting our third cohort next week, and we just got our first young man offered a full-time position in the fire department from our very first class. So we are beyond and over excited.
Nice to meet you. So we're grateful for your presence, and we've got just over half an hour or so. So I think what might make sense, and I hope that this was sort of practically funded, here 3 or 4 minutes from each of you, and then allow a little bit of time for some questions from us. So I guess some of our local staff here will be sort of waiting around at time that's long to do the presentation, but. Again, thank you all, and we're just so thrilled to hear from you about these programs. What order we want to go in. Thank you again.
That sounds great. I think we'll start with the kindergarten college program, and then we'll move on to the guaranteed income programs. So if you don't mind, I'll start, and then my associates will join talking about their experience. So again, welcome. Our kindergarten college program is one of many programs we've launched out of the Treasurer's Office. As I mentioned, we've done a lot of work over many years connecting people to bank accounts, speaking away from third graders, helping people be more successful with their funds. But 11 years ago, we launched the kindergarten college program because we based it on research that showed if a child and the child's family is engaged with saving, making savings for college, that action builds motivation in that child's mind, and that child is 7 times more likely to go to college compared to not having that kind of experience in their childhood. And we show that if once they get into college, they're 4 times more likely to be college. So we really want to see success, particularly in kids in low-income families. And so we started a first of its kind program here in San Francisco, where we partnered with the school district. And we basically set it up this way. We made it automatic and universal. Every child that enters our local school district automatically at kindergarten, we open up a college savings account for that child. So that's about 4,500, close to 5,000 accounts we open up every year for incoming children in our school district. By the way, like many school districts across the country, our district is comprised of the majority of low-income families. And we know that many of them will grow up without this, perhaps with no college savings account in their name. We wanted to build a pathway to success for these kids. And we particularly do this in a way that makes it easy for the families to engage. We ultimately want to be able to steer families towards sometimes the best college savings model, which is a 529 program. But we found that for a lot of low-income families, particularly need is easy access. So we opened up our accounts at a local commercial bank. Our families can walk into a local bank branch with cash in their hand, lay it down in the teller window, and make a deposit right then and there to their child's college savings account. And I can't tell you how glad it was. We have had a huge percentage of our families make in-person deposits at their convenience right there in their own neighborhood. Let me, and we really wanted to make sure that we included everybody and there was no barriers to entry. Families didn't have to do a thing. They didn't decide a piece of paper. They didn't have to take any action. We issued them a card and said, you already have gotten your child to be going into the deposit today. We put the initial deposit of $50 in, and we've offered numerous incentives where we matched or incentivized families making deposits of their own. In fact, we even stepped up that game and made sure that low-income families had an opportunity to get more money from the city. Let me just fast forward to today. Today, we've opened 50,000 accounts. That's nearly all of the kids in the San Francisco Public School District. Almost a quarter of all the families we've opened accounts for that made deposits into the accounts we made for them. And when we look at the families that are engaging with the accounts, half of them are free reduced price lunch eligible, which matches the profile for the entire student population. So what that tells me is we're reaching kids and families at every income level because our income profile is identical to the profile of the entire population. I believe we're the first program of its kind to find a way to get even poor families to save for college. To date, the families have saved nearly $11 million in their savings accounts. And only 1/3 of that money is city money. 2/3 of that money is money deposited by the families. Our families are doing a 2-to-1 math success in terms of what we're putting in the account and what they're putting in the account. So we've got families to save millions of dollars in their kids' college education. And as I said a second ago, just a couple of years ago, we started with extra funding from the state of California. We started an additional promotion that targeted our poorest families and allowed them to get incentive payments of as much as $150 up to 3 times over. If these families will make just a simple 2 or 3 deposits at any size, we will end them up with at least $500 in their savings account for their kids' college education. We really want to make a difference and disparity and be able to equalize the opportunities for everyone in our school district, no matter what their background, no matter their family background, to have success, go to college, and achieve whatever their successful goals are. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matthew and Andy to talk about their families. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that this KBC program has been very beneficial for my family as a small business owner and a mother of 3 boys. It was very challenging when COVID hit. I just started thinking about how am I going to be able to support these kids if my business is closed. I have no way of supporting my business, my employees, let alone my own family. At my times, I just always feel like, what am I going to do to protect the dream? And what kind of a dream can we talk about? We used before we talk about how we would be traveling different places, how I will be able to get them their dream bicycle so they can ride to school without having to worry about it. But then when COVID hit, all those dreams were shattered. And then we were thinking about how to just survive the next day. How would I be able to get them food, and how would I be able to wake up in the morning and go to work and be able to support my own activities and then keep the business running. But hearing about all these government support, all these small programs that San Francisco has been working on to just get us back into a good mode and also thrive and be alive and be thriving the way it's supposed to before helping and supporting me alive. I brought the statements of what my kids receive every once in a while when they get their statements from KBC. Would you like to see one? This is for my middle child. This one is for Zachariah, who's the other one. He saw this yesterday and he was so happy. He said, "Mom, I have $70. Wow, what can I buy with $70? He said, I can buy the whole school popsicles. I said, no, you don't buy popsicles. But you're going to use your brother to save it for you to, go to school, and this is for my older. And right now, they are all bragging about the past war. Unfortunately, Zachariah has less because his was just open. But I'll tell you, he's been doing a good job at my work. I own a cafe right here in the Tenderloin, and he is been selling himself. So So he's made, in the last month and a half, he's made $200. So I said, if I put the $200, they're still giving me $200. That really my secretary wants to get. But this is just for me to just kind of explain how these kind of small programs that the city has been doing, how it's really hitting the people who are really in need. I am one of those businesses, I'm one of those families that really see the benefits of these programs. I truly see, and it has facilitated actually the conversation with my kids when we talk about college. Growing up as a young girl in West Africa, Senegal, where I'm from, I could have never imagined of having a savings account because that's not the way things work. My mom and my dad didn't finish college, they went to religious schools, and then went later on to French schools, but couldn't finish it. And then go on. My mom wanted a better life. That's why she brought me here. And that's why she also did all she could so I can live the American dream. And then for me, in return to live the American dream and give it back to my kids, I'm trying my level best to figure out what are the different ways I can support not only my communities, but also my kids as well. This savings account has been helping and supporting and facilitating how I can talk to my kids about college, how to pay for it. It hasn't been easy, but being able to save $5, $2, there is no limit for me to be able to put in this 25 cents, 50 cents, putting them all together, and then later on putting it in the bank account has been very rewarding and very helpful. And I hope that you guys hear all hear us and then know that these programs should definitely stay. And if we could promote it to all of the other states, all of the other young kids, brown kids, black and brown kids, anybody, whether you are a immigrant, whether you are not an immigrant, as I think all kids deserve college, all kids deserve to go to school, all kids are able to supposed to be able to say that after high school, I should be able to choose whether I want to go to college or not. And these programs, I think, will definitely facilitate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Not bad, huh? Yeah, wonderful. Andy.
Hi, okay, so I'm Candy, and like I said before, I'm a mother of 4 children. Unfortunately, my senior didn't get a K2C account. We opened a 529 account, and it's much more complicated than the K2C because you have to like figure out which way to go. With K2C, it's open, and it's open for any child, regardless where you come from, working status, immigration status, and that has been a huge blessing, not just to my family, but families all around. And it helps to save for these children because later down the line, I don't have to worry, well, they'll have to deal with school loans. I'm still paying my school loan from when I went to college. And I definitely don't want that for my children. So that I see this like a huge opportunity for us as parents to save up for our children's future. So college is not just a dream, it'll be a certainty for them. And it's helped out a lot to a lot of parents. I work with mission graduates, and we do workshops with different schools. Before the COVID, we would go in person to schools, present the K2C, have like a little special day for K2C, and we would bring tell the parents to come in, and there'd be like a donation for the accounts for each kid, and they get like this cute little blue bank, like a little piggy bank, and the kids loved it. The kids loved it, and it's the stuff that I really miss with all this COVID going on, and you can't be in person, but it's still there, and we're just hoping that after all this is over, we can continue to work with all the families, all the communities, because like I said, this is a big opportunity for our children to feel safe and to know that, hey, I have a future, I can do this, I can go here, I can go to this college, I can go anywhere I choose, anything's a possibility. And I wish I would have had that when I was growing up. My children are the second generation to live here and study here. I was brought here when I was 2. Then I became part of the foster system. And, I had my complications, but I'm very proud of myself and I'm proud of my kids. I see them growing up. My oldest is ready to, hit the world and go to city and then figure out where he's gonna go from there. And, it's great. And this opportunity for our children is great. And I hope that these kind of programs don't work out just for us and our city, but, nationwide, because they are needed. And the children listen, they understand, they get motivated. And you don't want to destroy those dreams, you want to keep them going, for them to reach whatever dream they have and not have, any limits. And I'm just really grateful that I was given the opportunity and the time to come here. And we're very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you heard from a couple of family members. I'm proud of the work we're doing with the program. As Kendi mentioned, we started the program 11 years ago. So her 12th grader, we missed by a year, I'm afraid to say. Sorry about that, Kendi.
It's okay.
But we had to start somewhere. But I am proud of the fact that our oldest account holders are juniors in high school this year. So next year in the spring, we'll be having some graduating high school seniors graduating with money in their kindergarten to college accounts and hopefully being able to act on their college success and dreams with whatever savings and motivation and excitement they've gained through that opportunity. And we're excited to go forward. I will say that a number of other cities and a number of states have launched their own children's savings accounts programs. There are a few different models that are out there. I'm very proud of the model that we created. And we've seen a lot of success, and we certainly would like to see it continue going forward and grow even wider, as both my friends have mentioned right here. Every kid in the country deserves it. We cannot go forward having just kids from middle and high income families populating our colleges and our educational opportunities after high school. We need to have everybody have that chance.
Do you see retention now that you've had a cohort that's almost getting ready to graduate high school? Do you see effects on retention?
We haven't figured that out yet, but we're going to take a look at that. There's obviously a lot of other things, not the least of which a pandemic that's affected, families moving and things like that. So it's a little hard to get around that. But we're definitely looking at that. We're looking forward to seeing how we can hear more from the families about how the account made a difference. But we'd like to have the opportunity to look at all those things. We're confident we've made a difference, but we think that it would be useful to have, more scientific results.
And I have a couple questions. One is, how does it work for kids who start in the school district after kindergarten?
Great
or
question.
Kids who move out of the school district.
Great question.
Through their K-12 career. I know for us in San Diego, at least, we've got a lot of that mobility through different school districts and in and out of the city lines. And then I guess you said 25% of families have made deposits.
Mm-hmm.
So what work are you doing with the other 75% of families to try and get parental contributions? And if it's only the city's money, how much would it be by the time they graduate?
So excellent questions. Let me start at the beginning. We do make sure that there's an account for every child that's in the school district. So to your point, there are kids that, of course, most kids start in kindergarten, but each grade year, some kids might move into the city. For any kids that come into the school district at any class grade level who don't have an account, we open an account for them. So we actually open more accounts each year than we have actually entering kindergartners, because we also have the higher grade kids that enter the school district. Is once a family makes deposits into the account, we don't close the account, we keep it open, and they are still part of the K-2C program, even if they leave the school district. If a family leaves the school district at any point in time and they haven't made any deposits, then we don't continue to keep them in the program, because for all we know, they don't even know it exists. And certainly once they leave the district, our incentives are no longer available to them. Therefore, our students here in San Francisco. But we're always trying to reach out and increase the take-up rate. One of the things we've kind of heard a little bit anecdotally is that some families look at the account we open for them and say, well, I've already got a college savings account, whether it be a 529 or something else. So they don't feel they need to also deposit into multiple accounts. They just go with the one they had. What I'd love to know someday is, of the other ones, the families that don't deposit, how many of them already have college savings accounts? Because then I really would know kind of what my target is, which is families that have no college savings account, because that's who we really want to help. But I'm still trying to figure out how we get to that universe. But I think you asked a lot of the right questions, and I forgot your last question.
If the parent made no contribution, the kids
Right.
started in kindergarten, they're graduating next year, how much money would be in the account?
We put a $50 initial deposit into every account. That's would still be there.
And you don't make any additional contributions unless it's like incentive.
Just incentives to pretty much encourage more engagement. Because what the research showed, that by going to the bank and making a deposit into the child's college savings account, that name on the account, it started a thought process and usually a conversation about college, which is really what delivers the benefits. It's not clear that our $50 sitting there or anything else really was delivered the benefits. It was the family engaging in the child more than anything, engaging in this concept of, this is an opportunity for me. This is a path. I can do this. My parents say I can do this. The school says I can do this. This is what I'm going to do.
And sorry, one last question.
Sure.
What about students who choose not to go to college? Could they use it for trade school or other? programs?
Any educational purpose at all? Yes. So yes, the answer is yes.
At some point, it'll be so fascinating to look at your data, right? In other words, so if
Sure.
3/4 who donate, is there still an effect in terms of more likely to attend college? I suspect you don't have that yet, but at some point it will be so interesting to look at that. Because I mean, if there is a powerful pro-college effect, even for a family that doesn't engage, oh my gosh, what a
Great.
But anyway, I know we're short on time, so when that data comes out, oh my goodness, we'd love to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. I know I don't want to ask more questions because we
That's-
don't want to
please.
shortchange
I agree.
our other presenters. Go
No
ahead.
worries. I'm sitting here very enwrapped, so totally understand. Well, thank you to this wonderful committee, the important work you're all doing. Thank you, Nafi. Thank you, Kendi. My name again is Isa Villarosa from the Yerba Buena Center of the Arts, or YBCA, and I support implementation and movement building for our guaranteed income program. I am sitting here, a first generation queer Panay activist artist attorney with light beige skin and short black hair. I'm wearing a black shirt. I'm seated and I live on Ramaitush Ohlone land. And prior to YBCA, I examined wealth and income inequality with the Insight Center across the Bay in Oakland, looking at data research, narrative change, much around the same questions that we are posed around today. And I'm here to tell you why, as YBCA, we believe in guaranteed income as a moon step, as a piece of larger advocacy toward broader, bigger change. And hopefully I have enough time to get to those suggestions at the end. A little bit about YBCA. We were open to the public in 1993, and we believe that artists, creative workers, and culture bearers are uniquely equipped to interrogate our hardest challenges by social, racial, economic justice. Our why for this work it's really our origin story. The name Yerba Buena comes from Spanish colonizers from the land now known as San Francisco, and our building sits on a sacred Ohlone shell mound. YBCA itself, its physical form was created by an act of urban renewal by the city, and in doing so, we displaced residents, including the Black, Indigenous, Latino, Filipino, and AAPI elders, families, and artists who were really the heart of the Soma neighborhood. And so we're here today because we see this historic and present role in community displacement and harm, as well as our duty toward meaningful, clear action to dismantle some of that harm today in the present. And right now, as part of that charge, we are implementing 2 GI income initiatives through a total of $4.6 million. This is investment in artists, and this is funded in part by YBCA, by our mayor and the San Francisco Arts Commission, and by Jack Dorsey's Start Small initiative. Through this work, 18 monthly payments of $1,000 go to a total of 190 artists living in San Francisco. Receipt of these payments is unconditional. Our first program, as I mentioned earlier, launched in May 2021, and that cohort is 130 San Francisco artists who are disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And when I say that, I note that this was the longest closure of performance spaces since World War II. The pandemic wrought extreme destruction on the arts, and most specifically for artists and culture workers of color. But as a result of this program, these creative leaders have not ceased to give a voice to the soul and stories of their communities. Our second program, which is about to launch, is a 60 artist program, also 18-month pilot, and also unconditional $1,000 payments. We're administering the second tranche together with community organizations in San Francisco who center the art and artistry of immigrant, people of color, refugee, non-English speaking and undocumented artists, queer and trans artists, sex working artists, artists in communities grappling with over-policing in the carceral system, and housing insecure and unhoused artists. Artists in both of these pilots have the option to participate in an institutional review board study. As Chairman mentioned, data is so important to this work and measuring success. And our study in particular looks at the impact of unconditional cash on artists' economic security, well-being, and artistic expression. And going back to the why, we do this work because cash improves lives, full stop. We all know here that this is true to our core, and it's borne out in the data that we hope to share with you when it comes forward. These artists in the pilot, they speak of added breathing room through guaranteed income. Chris Watts, who is a Bayview artist, talks about what he calls the emotional currency bolstered through a guaranteed income. He says, people have been creating from struggle for so long. Imagine the ideas that can come when you don't have to worry about where your money will come from next. They've spoken of increased power to move and to move people. Marika Brussel, who's a San Francisco artist and teacher, has said, my production, House of Names, was shut down during the pandemic. When I got the pilot funds, I was able to pay the production's dancers with the money. I could go on and on and on, as can Kevin, about what this cohort of nearly 200 artists is doing with the money, sustaining colleagues, supporting each other, meeting new loved ones, traveling across the country, and the infinite ways artists uplift and make whole and healthy their communities. But the truth is, as to the countless reasons why and how people access cash, none of this is any of our business, and it should not ever matter. Guaranteed income is, by definition, unconditional and should only be about one thing: dignity. Human beings are eminently capable of making the best decisions for themselves, regardless of race, age, gender, sex, family, zip code. Artist participation in these pilots offers individuals who would like an opportunity to use their personal narratives to shift societal ones. As my colleagues from Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and the Insight Center emphasize, all GI work is narrative work. And at its core, this movement challenges notions of who is deserving, who is worthy. By making cash payments to artists regardless of their merit, which has been the norm for far too long, we are saying that everyone deserves economic security. Everyone deserves to live in the fullest expression of their personhood. Everyone should buy popsicles for their people at school. It's about these intangibles of a full life: laughter, dignity, joy. I'm going to conclude with a couple recommendations. We need to fight for a national GI, as has been called by my colleagues here. We need to look at a federal waiver for SSI benefits so that it's not an either or, which it currently is for many artists in our pilot. We cannot live in scarcity any longer. We must work together to set protocols that move at the pace of equity. We should ask ourselves, do these timelines for these pilots support and create incentives for building relationships and trust? Are we developing research and data tools with the community together? And finally, as an institution at the intersection of art, creativity, and social justice, we hope that this work leads to a pivot away from the merit-based funding and instead toward more models at the local and national level that unconditionally trust people to make the best decisions for themselves. I am running short of time and have more to say, but hopefully we can get to that in the dialogue. I don't want to miss my dear friend Kevin, who will share more about the program.
Thank you. I'm gonna be revising on the spot, so I hope you don't mind if I share something. I guess it's more of a like lyric essay type thing.
Sure.
So allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Kevin Dublin.
And I'm a writer with skin as dark as the darkest pine tree bark, with long black dreadlocks wrapped at the back of my head like a crown, wearing nearly all black everything, dress shoes, jeans, and long sleeve t-shirt, which reads teacher and uniter and poet and activist and catalyst, which spells out Tupac, which perhaps says more about me than writer does. And I live and I'm coming to you live from unceded Ramayush Ohlone land conquered by imperialists, the imperialist Spanish and named Yerba Buena, land conquered by the imperialist Americans and named San Francisco, including one Lieutenant Henry Bowles Watson, who 10 years later would inherit papers and property which claimed he owned my ancestors' great-grandmother named Adelaide as slaves. And today, land claimed by people who believe so many different things. When we all know most of the shore was once the bay, and what we walk on was once ocean. Because of where I'm from, which is Smithfield, North Carolina, home of Ava Gardner, like so many signs that literally went until 1987, which was read, "Welcome to Klan country, help fight communism and integration." But I believe in humanity, and I believe in humanity as much as I believe there are sparrows when I hear distant sparrows song. In the same way, I believe in the potential of each of us to help revolutionize this country. Because what does it mean when our nation's leaders only uphold the dreams of others like them, especially when it costs a toll too great to assume the role for those who need representation most? I'm here because I'm one of the recipients of Yerba Buena Center for the Arts Basic Income Pilot for Artists in San Francisco, which is only one of the city's guaranteed income pilots, which we talk about, hear more about. Some of the others, and these pilots are a success thanks to the mayor, the San Francisco Guaranteed Income Advisory Group, and so many more. Some people ask specifically, in terms of IBCA, I remember when it was announced, oh, why artists? And it was always strange to me, considering that art, meaning any intentional craft in one form or another, creates all culture. You can call it music, design, engineering, style, swag. I call it art. If we do not support art, then we do not support culture. That's why New York State and Creatives Rebuild New York has begun a new initiative to not only invest a guaranteed minimum income to 2,400 artists across the state, but also invest and facilitate employment for 300 artists at art organizations statewide for $65,000 a year, the state's median household income. Because it's an investment to create a healthy society, because whether we acknowledge it or not, we are in an unhealthy society, and in so many forms, and we have to act now to heal it, which is one of the things that you're all here for, what you're fighting for. One of the major criticisms of guaranteed minimum income pilots at all, and just in general, is what kind of impact such a small amount of money have on such a limited amount of people over a short amount of time. And one answer is that it's the difference between eventually being able to catch up on rent and stressing over eviction after you lose income during a pandemic, because the majority of your work took place in person, because it's community-based. It's the difference between a 4-year-old's desire to live with his father still going on unfulfilled 8 years later, and it finally being fulfilled. It's the difference between being able to afford a cross-country trip, connecting with family one hasn't seen in years, introducing a lot of them to his children who have never met them, hearing the story of a father selling the shoes from his feet and jacket from his back to feed his 2 younger brothers when his mother was sick, and never learning you have a great uncle you never heard of because he was lynched in the trees you would pass on the road to the church you went to as a kid. So those are only from my own personal experience as a part of the pilot. It has allowed me the monetary and mental bandwidth to dig through a genealogy of Southern love and trauma and find an ancestral history I'm still processing and hope to write about, to organize a reading series in Salon, which features a diverse group of poets and hosts community conversations about issues which affect those in the Bay Area. It feels wonderful to be invested in by my local government and community in this way. And I'm sure that feeling is shared by, all, or, many of the other participants of the pilot. But the truth is that guaranteed minimum income in itself is not a solution. It's one treatment of symptoms of a much greater illness. And that illness would only be healed with a radical redistribution of wealth, of power and alongside the unconditional economic, political, and civil liberation of all people. We recognize that this system does not work. It allows the savage and unnecessary inequalities of poverty to continue, and we call it a failure. But can we still call it merely a failure if it leads to the death of millions? Or is it a genocide? Suicides on the rise, a crisis of the unhoused, while hundreds of thousands amass wealth and children sleep in lice-covered clothes, waking to the dawn hungry without health insurance, and a divided nation falling and failing, still pushed by media narratives with motives of profit, a lack of trust in institutions, who talk less, who smile more, who have an inability to provide basic social services to its citizens because they lack consensus on legislation, and many care more about taking time off, about lining their own pockets from insider information and stock or security trades or speaking engagement or private consulting after than doing the job they were elected and to serve their constituents. How can we heal when we've witnessed the vulnerabilities in our government's response to our crises? When those vulnerabilities are not limited to a president nor a particular party, but the limitations of the design of our economy and the social safety net, and it's not acknowledged. It's like watching someone trying to carry water for a mile through the desert in cupped hands. We must acknowledge that these problems have at some point been integrated into our society, and if they've been integrated, then they can be disintegrated. And it will take work on all fronts, from all avenues, and by working together to address them all. If I were naive, I would say, I don't understand how in a land which praises innovation that we can ignore our economic systems of failing the majority of our people. While we haven't developed a better system than the existing systems, why so much of the wealth is concentrated within the top, not even just the top 1, the top 10%, and the bottom middle is, has way, way less than that. But until we develop an answer to that kind of rapid capitalism we have in our country, it means we need to work in it. It means reparations must be paid for this kind of flagrant abuse. Reparations must be paid for the decades of federally backed, locally mandated policies like redlining and segregation and slavery, which block access to generations of wealth accumulation and intrinsically link class with race. It means we need to care enough about our nation's most vulnerable, valuable resources and invest in them, like the child tax credit, which is ended and languishes amid a limp proposal that will not survive. We cannot simply build back better, nor settle for better. Being good or good enough is not enough. How many generations will die because of incrementalism? We must pay what we owe. And how do we pay for what we owe? And how do we invest? By adapting programs like the kindergarten to college program, as it's been replicated, like those who already done that on state levels, on federal levels, finding models to match the needs of the people that are throughout the country. In November 2018, San Francisco voted in favor of reallocating 1.5% of existing 8% tax base on hotels to the arts and cultural services. And that was via Proposition E. So these funds go to art organizations, individual artists, and cultural endowments. This is only one example, but it's something like we need to see on, but it's something we need to see more of on this redistribution of wealth at the source, increasing taxes on corporate bodies before it reaches already wealthy pockets so that it may sustain the human bodies of our citizens. Again, I have felt invested in and as a part of this pilot program. And now that it's possible, I want to see the same kind of investment in each and every community that has long suffered. And I want that investment to begin in communities specifically and historically targeted for decimation at the federal, state, and local levels, and continue to this day. Much as Isa mentioned, we look at the spaces where we occupy, and there needs to be restitution. But where it comes, farther here, I wanted to sort of wrap up by sharing not my own words on this, but some of the words of some of the students and mentors part of 826 Valencia, which is a literary arts organization based in the Bay Area, but it's national, or specifically with the Black Literary Achievement Club and students there who are working on their own their own Black agendas. And so students like Wellington who feel everyone should have a home to go to and have access to free mental health, free healthcare. Or Kyla, who wants programs that extend education around the basics of home ownership, like the program under the mayor's office of housing and community development, and more programs that filter in more teachers that represent the student population. Or a Lynn, who wants housing to be more affordable. Or Frederick, who wants the support of the development of more Black businesses and franchises through grants. Or Darian, my own son, who wants people to have free meds and free rehab if they need it. Or Sammy, who wants the city and the country to create more programs like BLSC. We must all believe in and invest in these kids and all of our children, because as Pop might say, there ain't no hope for the youth, and the truth is there ain't no hope for the future, and the future is now. We have to believe that economic security isn't radical. It isn't radical for each citizen to have enough to eat or financial safety net. It isn't radical for each citizen to have financial freedom to fail, to start a business, or create culture. It isn't radical for each citizen to be able to take care of their family or their community and still feel valued by their society. It isn't radical to know we need more and demand it. And it's the starting point. And we all know from the first time our 4 or so year-old hands draw circles in the sand or with chalk on a sidewalk or with a large pencil on paper, that each circle begins with a starting point, and each starting point can become a revolution. And what every member of institutions and every individual citizen must decide is whether they will be a part of this revolution or whether they will be destroyed by it.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to hear from also from Ms. Bowden. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm not as fiery as that. I have lots of handwritten notes, but it is all in my heart. This journey of actually being able to be at this table. So I just first say thank you for even allowing me a last minute opportunity to speak about the program. I'll speak about myself a little bit. That seems to be the approach. So my name is Attica Bowden. I am a native San Franciscan. I grew up in District 5, what we grew up as Fillmore, but turned into a little bit of Western Addition. Attended public school, and I believe I was just telling Director Arce, my very first job was through what's called Private Industry Council, or what was called Private Industry Council. At 13 years old, it was a workforce development job opportunity. It was my very first job was working for the city and county of San Francisco at 13 years old, working for social services. So I have come full circle. I am 25 years in with the San Francisco Fire Department. I started as a firefighter. I came in at the moment that there was a consent decree going on, so there was a need of diversity. So it is only fitting, as I make my exit plan out of that career, that I am finding the art and opportunity to give back to the community and pass the baton. That is what City EMT vision is that the first barrier is to create the awareness. You can do this job. You can work for the city and county. You can stay a citizen and constituent of San Francisco, and you can give back to your community. So a lot of young adults, my community is based on 18 to 24-year-olds. When we first began speaking to them, they said, I always wanted to be a public servant. I always wanted to be a firefighter, work on the ambulance, just didn't know how to do it, didn't know what the process was. Well, that's our beginning barrier, is to tell you first you can't, second, participate in my program. The next biggest barrier was to become a certified EMT, emergency medical technician. The barrier is that you have to stop what you're doing and you have to only concentrate on the books. Is that a socioeconomic barrier? Yes, because for 18 to 24-year-olds, some of them, if they are living with parents, they are contributing to the household. Some of our students actually have already begun building their own families. So can I stop and go to school for a maybe job? No, I cannot. The ability to offer the guaranteed income allows them to stop working at a basic job and earn while you learn, is what we kind of say, with a program that offers the supportive services. I do believe it is what creates our success rate in them actually getting employment. Not the success rate of actually completing the course. They're learnable already, whether they know it or not. They're learnable and they complete the programs, even if they go to City College of San Francisco and take that course. Where we stand out is that we have our ongoing supportive services from health and nutrition, mental health. Let's start unlayering some of the childhood trauma. There is a lot of childhood trauma in our communities, and some of them don't realize that it is affecting how they maneuver through life as adults until we give them that free space and safe space to speak on it, or to see that they weren't the only ones. And then the second component that we give them is the earned income. That income has taken 2 of our students off of the streets. It hurt my heart when we interviewed one young lady and she said she was living in her car. And this was before she came into our program. It was one of our priorities once we got her into the program. You cannot study and get your mind right living in a, I don't know, what is that, 2x2 or 3x2, right? So that was one of the things. And then another young lady who was living in Sacramento. We wanted her back into the city. That guarantee-based income helped her to be able to move out of her parents' house, come back into the city and stay in the city after she completed the program with some affordable housing that we were able to provide her. One life skill that we have heightened a priority on is financial literacy. I don't want to just provide you the monies. I also want to leave you with some long-term tokens or tools in your toolbox to move forward with. So financial literacy is a component that we are adding. We are funded by the Dream Keepers initiative. It has been beyond helpful for us in this moving forward with our cohorts. We are just, as I said, starting cohort 3 and looking forward to having 2 or 3 more cohorts within this budgeted cycle. And that was it. That was my little spiel. I have more, but that's my spiel.
Yeah, well, I know we're running real short of time, so I do want to express gratitude, but also just see if we could probably ask a couple of questions if you guys got them.
Well, I guess we're working on a guaranteed income program in San Diego too, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you found the need for waivers for federal benefits for guaranteed income programs, and how you're planning on sustaining the program after the pandemic, and what funding models you're looking at for that.
Yeah, these are hard, good questions, and I will answer them honestly. It is really difficult to be truthful, and Kevin knows this as well. It is an either or in the most frustrating, damaging way. And part of that is really around our very antiquated federal poverty measure, this algorithm that is over half a century old, that still presupposes families need 1/3 of their budget for food, when in reality, we know in this most expensive city of cities, well, maybe second most expensive, it is not the case now. So part of this frustration turns on a misperception on what economic need and poverty really mean. It's not a human-centered design. So something that we've learned in our pilot, and we are sharing with our community of practice across the nation and folks in San Diego, is if we do have gatekeepers to benefits, whether it's SSI, whether it's CalFresh here in California, that we also have a more holistic tool, a measurement tool to gauge economic need. So for us at YBCA, we lean on partners such as the Insight Center. They have something called the Family Needs Calculator. This is a very accurate cost of living tool for over 600 different family types, and also takes into account the many holistic needs to live in a city like San Francisco, but also in YOLO, in Inyo. This is work that is done in partnership with the University of Washington. So there's actually a different calculator, a different alternative measurement of poverty in numerous states across the country. And from a very practical perspective, one of the challenges in running a guaranteed income pilot as an arts institution is running a guaranteed income pilot as an arts institution. So I have colleagues here who are not physically present, but are literally doing the work of a one-person legal aid team. And that should not be the way. We have abundance, we have resources. So I hope that localities, that the federal government can really understand the true cost of need.
We've actually done a paper that looks at the conflict between guaranteed income and some benefits. We'd be happy to forward that to you all. But SSI, no surprise, is the biggest risk around a lot of this work. Love a solution at federal level.
I just have maybe, I don't know if we have time, but so I was trying to.
Mark, how are we doing?
We're pretty low on time.
I have a very quick question. Well, why don't you go, I'll go, and then we'll say thank you.
I mean,
one more time.
I just wanted to know if you were redesigning it today, is there anything you would change? And, for either of your programs, what do you know today that you didn't know before that would affect program design?
Yeah, there's a wonderful queer Black doula in East Bay, Brescia Wade, and she says, borders are violent and timelines are borders. And I say that to say that often pilots start with the best of intentions, all of us. I'm not naming names. Literally everyone wants to do this work. There isn't a deep appreciation in many cases of the time that it takes to move with care and equity. And so if we started over today, more time, but prioritizing things that are most important. In our current launch, our second pilot, our priority was we need to get the cash into the hands of artists. But that doesn't mean that we necessarily need to tell a certain story. The story can come second. Let's take care of the most immediate basic needs. So I think close examination of a timeline that centers race with equity is just a bare minimum for all these pilots.
I believe working through nurturing new partnerships may have been better done on the forefront. But a lot of it, when you're dealing with the partnerships, is very data driven. And I don't have any data until I have some funding to show you a success rate. Right. So we definitely started flying an airplane as we were still putting it together last January when we finally got a green light on some funding after a lot of pitching. And then it was like, do we have everything in place? I think our benefit was that, and maybe I should have said this, is that we are modeled after a program that is in Alameda County that had 10 years of success rates. So I do believe that a lot of our lack of need to iron out any wrinkles as we went along was because we had that person, that executive director, on as a consultant and said, don't do that, don't do that. Or yes, this is the way to go. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, you did,
Okay.
totally, yeah.
I just have a very quick question for Ms. Bowden. How many young people are going through the program, and is the funding source such that you're confident that it will be able to continue into the future?
So we started, our first cohort was 15. Through attrition, we lost 2. It's a normal percentage rate, but cohort 3, we started with 16. I called them 16 strong, and we ended with 16. We are confident in our increase. So we increased by a count of 2, and we're going to start with 18 this time, and just make sure that our student ratios do not affect testing outcomes and success rates of the students. That's the hardest part, is having a successful program, but not having enough space for our applicants. In regards to sustainability of our funding, we are always concerned about sustainability of funding. We are working with new foundations and funding partners as we move forward.
Well, I know we're under time pressure, but I do think we succeeded in our objective of doing the unnatural act of listening a lot more than we talked. So I really just want to thank you again. And as you know, we're all federal officials, and so it's wonderful to hear these programs. Mr. Treasurer, you did this. We're really hungry for ways that the federal government can be constructive, can help, can assist, can send resources to programs that are working. So we'd love to continue this dialogue with specific asks for us.
We have some real ideas, let's just say for college savings, some 529 improvements and changes could be really helpful.
Yeah, that was very interesting how you opened up the complexity of a 529 being a real barrier. That hadn't occurred to me.
It's a real roadblock for low-income families, and the flexibility that we went with by starting with a regular bank account, like I said, walking into a teller with $5 in your hand, there's nothing that beats that.
It goes to
And-
the importance of local banks, which we talked about in one of the hearings that we had.
Exactly,
And the
yeah.
measure of poverty we've talked about as well.
But partnering those banks with the 529 program and so on and so forth, so the funds can make their way to the best place they should land, really good.
Yeah. No, and those of us, I said in the Financial Services Committee, those of us with oversight responsibilities for the financial sector should push the Fidelities and the Vanguards of the world to figure out a way to make it easier for people to do what is.
They love to point at some of your laws though and say that you're stopping them from doing.
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure you have.
Well, thank you, everybody. We're very
Thank you for
grateful.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your beautiful.